Hi everyone, my name is Christoph Muehlinghaus, and I've been, since the pandemic, focusing very heavily on learning about poker and making my class better for the students as much as I can. Just want to make a little tutorial of some of the main points. And so what I've done is I've put a few modules up on Commons, for Canvas Commons, so for you guys to download sort of as templates, and I just want to kind of go through that. The first thing I want to do is show you how to download from Commons, in case you don't know that yet. Yeah, so we got this here. Here we go into the Commons is down here. Sorry about that. We go into Commons, and then you got to type in my name on top, which is Christoph Muehlinghaus, Muehlinghaus, and it's not the E. And then we go there, and then you have these modules that have docs in it. And those are the ones that I created. So I have a class orientation sample, and I have a week 1 and a week 2 modules. The first week is a lot of community building, and then I have week 2 be a follow-up one. When we go, for example, in this one that we want to import, we go and click on it, and then we click on the import button, and then we tell it where to go. And I'm going to put it here into an EDT shell, practice shell, and then you import it into the course. And here you go. When it says that, it's importing it. And now if I go back to the dashboard, and I go to my shell here that I've imported it or tried to modules, voila, here it is. All right, so that's how sort of fairly simple that is. So let's go back to my course where I pulled the modules from to show you about them. Here I got these sample modules. So we're going to talk about these 3 modules right here. So I have an orientation module that I sort of put everything in that orients for the class. What I did in the orientation model, I also, for the template, I also put in things like a homepage, or I have learning tools that are put in a separate model. So I just put them in here. Same as a welcome letter that I usually put in announcement, but I can't put the announcements up in Commons, I don't think. So I put it in here. And then I also have a special page that helps us to break long text into shorter texts or making with tabs. I have a way to create that and hopefully easily import that in your course, even if you don't know these HTML codes. So let's start with the homepage, since that's usually what the student sees first. And so in a homepage, we want to have the homepage be welcoming. We want to welcome the student. And so on top, I created a picture, and I'll show you in a later tutorial how these pictures are easily made in Canva. Not Canvas, Canva. That's a place where we can make those. Then I also put my name there, of course, the instructor name, as well as contact information. You see here, these contact information is going to go to linking to how to contact me page in the orientation module. So I'm going to go through that at that point. So this is just linking it to it. If you guys need to have help with linking it, please let me know. I can make a quick tutorial about that too. Then a little texty and a welcome video. And a welcome video, in terms of the content, I basically introduce myself and the course, and I explain how the course fundamentally works. I also explain how we can get help to go to Canvas, since maybe how to get to Canvas. And then I also want to briefly explain the course, how it works within Canvas in the video. This is a little long. I try to make it like 5 minutes. And then the other thing I put is helpful links. And so we want to have a few helpful links there, but not too many, so the students kind of know where to go with what. So we want to help the students get to the pertinent information within a few clicks. So this one is important. The enter here is important to get to the course material. So that will get them to the learning module number 1. When they click here. So that's how they can start with the material right away. Then this link goes to the syllabus, which is in the orientation module, but some students like to go and read it. That way they have an easy way to find it. And then I do, in my class, it's asynchronous. So I do a Zoom session every Monday in the beginning of the week. And it's not mandatory. And so I record it. And then I put the recording up on a page within the weekly modules. And so this is the first week, and this is especially for students who start a little bit late, then they can go right to that and get that first Zoom session. I have study tools. I'll go briefly over that. That's very personal and course related. Anatomy I teach is very, focused on memorizing terminology. And so I do a lot of that teaching in with flashcards. But I also in study tools want to talk to them about different things like the kinesthetic, the auditory learning styles, different learning styles, and then also the pyramid of learning, like just passively taking information doesn't give you that much retention versus doing something actively with it, such as teaching to others, which gives you a lot of retention. And then this is what I also did. I did a group Zoom link. So I did a Zoom link that's always open. And with our accounts, we can do that. And that's always present and there for students to meet up virtually, since it's an online class. And then they can have study groups up online. And I can also go in there, so I can also facilitate that, or a TA, for example. So that's been, I'm not sure how much they use it, but they always like that it's there. So that's kind of what I have in terms of the homepage. Not too much stuff on it, just to make it so it's not too overwhelming. And then let's go after that to the welcome letter, because the welcome letter is nice to send them out before the school starts. And I'll send them out actually a couple of 3 weeks before school starts. I want to get them started in the thinking of the class. I want to give them information they need, like get the textbook order, for example, if there's a textbook. So the welcome letter has a few items to it that I structured in. And this you can copy paste, use what you want and throw away what you don't or edit. This will be flagged as not enough contrast. So I'll fix that later. But we also have, I want to make a little tutorial about that. So when I look at the welcome letter, I have a few elements. I have the class title, the section, that is. I have the class times in there, that's important. I have office hours there, that's important. And then I introduce the course. And then I want to give some elements in there that help the students with computer lending program or cheap internet, for example, low cost or cheap internet. And these are links that they can go in. So if somebody doesn't have a computer, then they can go and get one from there. Obviously, if they don't have a computer, they might not get this email, which is a good point because I also communicate with my students straight through text. I don't personally have a problem with that with my personal number. I'm sure some of you do. Some schools have Pronto, so that's great. But I also try to find ways to communicate with them in a way that is accommodating them. And a lot of the students these days, email is kind of old school. Texting is sort of really works much better. So that's for that. And then also I would like to get them some Canvas resources. So to get the knowledge, basic knowledge on Canvas, if they are new to Canvas or they want to know more, they want to find help in there. And then as further down, I also have a list of student services that the school provides, such as health services, financial aid, so they can go there and get started with that. I also have some blurbs in here, like what it means to study online, like the pros and the cons of studying online and the pitfalls. What do we need to watch for? For example, we don't open the course and we get behind, and then it's hard to catch up because you don't have a teacher there telling you what to do all the time. Just that's, I want to make sure that as few as possible fall into that kind of problem and pitfall. I always got some you got to run after, of course. And we also got more links. There is a website that has people that need food and shelter, which is not all that secure these days for everybody. And click here. I also have student accessibility service link in here for learning support when we need that or want that. I introduce myself briefly, just a couple of sentences in here, because I do that a couple of places, and then get the students ready at the end of the time here to go to the college homepage to get started with Canvas. And so that's pretty much the welcome letter that I do. All right, after that, let's go to the syllabus. Now the syllabus is in the orientation module. And the syllabus has multiple elements to it. It has some elements that are necessary to put in, and some elements that are just not mandatory. I should say mandatory or obligatory. But I have this also as a template, so you can weed out what is not necessary if you want to use this as a template, and change what is personal on your course and leave what is mandatory. What I do is I first introduce my course again. I talk again about the online course being sort of a positive and a pitfall bringing situation. And then I start describing the course. Sorry. I'm starting to describe the course in here. What is the student learning? How is the material presented? What type of assignments and activities will they get? Stuff like that. Then I have my information. Who am I? What am I doing? How to get in touch with me? How to, they can text me, for example. And then after that, I have an inclusivity statement. And I think that's also one of those where these days it'd probably be helpful to have it in there, something like that. And the same is true for an online etiquette. I do have a few activities that they do later on with this material. So I know they're looking at it. I have an etiquette contract. They have to read. This thing goes to a PowerPoint presentation of like 5-6 slides that talks about it. So I want them to go through that and make a contract, and what is their commitment to this netiquette situation, so that we have from the start, we talk to each other nicely. I also have a syllabus Q&A discussion, or I do orientation questions that ask them a little bit about the syllabus. I have those in the module 1 in there as activities, so you can go and look at them, and I can point them out real quick too when we get to that. All right, so that's that. And then student resources. Oh, that's certainly one that should be in there as obligatory. Have all that stuff in there to help the students find what they need. So like the library link, learning center link, Canvas link again, internet, Chromebook, similar to the welcome letter in many ways. But again, and the welcome letter, by the way, we put in an announcement because then it's also archived. So we put it in announcement, but we email it to them too. And again, I told you, I also do some texting with the students. Then the recommended class material, I wrote my own textbook, and so I use that. There's also OpenStack link here. So that's course related or personal. Learning objectives, that's in Curriculum. You can find that. That's important to put the student performance objectives and the SLO, the student learning outcomes, in there. POCR wants us to kind of have it in the syllabus and then also have it in individual modules, but and make sure we address the objectives within the modules. But I refer back to the syllabus. I don't want always a big list of everything. It's too much for the students to absorb, I think. And then, of course, everybody has their grading system and their way of grading and the cutoff and the late work and penalty markup policy and all of that. And then the same as attendance policy, of course. And then I put a course outline, just what we're doing each week. And at the end, again, something that we probably should put in there is a disclaimer, which is very generic at the end. All right, so that's pretty good. So now I want to go before I go into the orientation module itself, I want to briefly talk about the generic structure inside. Well, not generic structure, but the way fundamentally each module is built up, each learning module particularly. But we have an introduction section, we have a learning section, and then we have an apply section. My class has a lab to it, so we got to separate the classwork from the lab work. It's a little ambiguous which one sometimes, but some of that is a little gray area, but we have both sections in here, not just one. And then at the end, we finish up and we finish up the week with a wrap up. So in the introduction, what we have is, this one is only for week 2. So that's not, we can forget that to talk about the generic. But in a production, first what we have is we talk about the student learning objectives. So what are the students learning this week? And first up here, what are they learning? And then further down, what I put down is what activities do they have and how do those activities relate to what they're learning, how many points those activities give you, and when is the due date for those activities. I usually stop Sunday because that way students who work the whole week, they can finish up Sunday. Sometimes students work Saturday too, sometimes they work Sunday, but I give them the 7 days to finish. I don't like Friday deadlines and stuff because some people, it just doesn't fit their schedule. Importantly here is that we use Bloom's technology, taxonomy, and that Bloom's taxonomy basically means we use verbs that are actionable. We use things that are measurable and demonstratable. So we don't just say, oh, this week you will learn about energy. We say this week, after this week, you can differentiate matter from energy. So you can do something with it. So if you type in Bloom, and I can probably put some helpers with that on too, Bloom taxonomy, you get a list of these verbs that you can just use. And then this is going right, linking to the student learning outcomes and performance objectives that's in the syllabus. So that's how we started. And then I also give them that introduction Zoom there. This is, oh, look, I actually have it here. So this is the first Zoom that I put up. After I done it, I record it, and then I get the recording. I put it in YouTube. And then it goes into Studio here. And by the transfer, I also try to put in some captions down. And I have a tutorial that I want to make also about that, or that I have also to do that process. So because captioning is something pretty important for accessibility in doing online classes. And then after the introduction, come on, Slowski, we get into the learning situation and in terms of the teaching. And so there, what's most important is that, well, first we internally, we structure, we're given an overview or given a purpose, an activity. We also want a purpose. Why do we do this activity? And what is the activity going to be? And in overview here, I explain how, what I'm doing and how I'm presenting the material. And then afterwards, I give them directions, very specific directions of what to do. I have video presentations that I do, some on over the computer, some in class. They can listen to those. I also put in some transcripts. That's a little harder to do, so I don't have them all done yet. But some students seem to like that. So we want to present the material in a variety of ways. We want to have some text, maybe. We want to have some here. What I do is I put the keywords in bullets. And then I structure it that each section, that each main topic gets one of the tabs. So that's one way. Of course, images, pictures are always helpful, very helpful. Audio, video, etc. So that's, we want to present the material and have students access their learning style, basically, if they can. Not everybody can just sit down and read a book. And then at the end of it, we have additional information, and that's generic or standardized throughout the course. So every learning activity, every activity, learning module and every activity will have that at the end. I'm telling them what is the grading, what's the feedback, you know, do they get feedback or they don't get feedback, how fast is the grading going to be? Obviously, in a teaching module doesn't have the grading. So I just say there's no points in this activity. I kind of don't have to say that, I think, but it's better sometimes to be a little extra, you know, so you don't get the questions coming. And then if they need more help, I always tell them they can reach out to me via various ways. And then they can also have a link to the Learning Center. And I kind of want to give them an idea of how long it takes to do the task. Of course, that's individual. So I'll sort of take an average sort of time frame. This is sometimes a little hard to gauge, but. All right, and then after that, we're going to get into type of assessments. So now we have the learning done. Now we can apply it. And I basically try to have formative assessments in there, which is students can get feedback and they can correct their work. So they're learning through the process. These can be quizzes. So I got these, every lecture has questions behind it. And these questions they can take over and over again. There's no time limit. I also have a bunch of discussions. I have, for example, here, understanding concepts, where I want them to describe concepts that are important in their own words. Or also I let them make videos or audios, because I want to make sure I give them not just a variety of ways to learn the material, to get the material in, but also to provide feedback. I want that, or do their work in various ways. For example, if I got somebody who is from Mexico who can't speak English that well yet, it makes it very hard to type. Or actually, it doesn't have to be even a different language. Some people, it's very hard to type. So we can make an audio or a video out of that. And so then they can present the material that way. So I kind of like that. I also have other assignments. For example, I have things here like explain through images. So I teach them certain tasks. These are just things that I like them to do. This does not have anything to do with anatomy, but I like them to work with Google and images that they can then make their own textbook, because anatomy is a visual medium. So I try to be a little creative that way too. And then we also have for summative assessments, and that's the exams. I personally have a few exams inside my class, like test 1, test 2, and test 3. And those are all be able to take once. Those are the test type things. And that's where I want them to check the knowledge, or I check their knowledge, basically. Good. And inside an activity, I want to have an overview. What is the activity actually? This one is about concepts that are important that I want them to talk about. And then I have a purpose. Why were we going to do that? Well, explaining these things in your own concept will help you understand the stuff on a deeper level, for example. And then I always want to have very clear directions. I want to give them what do they need to do, 90-second video, 100 to 150 words length, words typing. And I give them instructions of that. And then, of course, further on here is the questions that I want them to do. And then as the other one that I already told you, the additional information. For late work, for me, I give them a small penalty. I accept late work because I know everybody has their own time frames and emergencies. But I want to make sure I spell that out every time in every activity. So that's often just a copy and paste situation. And then the other thing that's kind of cool and important that we do is we have rubrics. And rubrics can be found at the bottom of the activity, except in the discussions, we put them up here by the 3 stacked dots and just show rubric. And then you describe again what to do and what point values is associated with them. I basically use align versus not quite there yet. And so I give them either 0 points or full point value in those formative assessments, of course. That's just the way I do it, but because if I give them 4 points out of 5, I know half of the crowd is not going to touch it anymore. And I want them to keep working and keep coming back. Even if sometimes I get like, what the heck? I have almost everything right. I say, that's all right. You just work with it. I give you all the points at that point. And so, but that's a rubric, and we want to have those done for every activity. And then at the end of each module, we have a wrap-up. And the wrap-up, I have a questions and tips. That's a Padlet. And I'll show you how to do Padlet in a different tutorial. Padlets are kind of cool because the way that they look, see the way that they're all looking like Post-its, and then you can feed back to them. You can, it's kind of cute. And students seem to like it. But it's nice for them. It's good for me. It's nice for them because they can say, hey, this week was really hard. I had this happening, or I didn't understand this thing. Or they can say like, hey, I really learned this was really a great concept that I didn't understand, and I really like it now. Or it helped me to do this, to learn this better, stuff like that. And then I can go there and read them too, give them feedback through it. So it's another place to back and forth. And I can also read myself into where do I need to improve the course maybe? Where do I need to reflect if things come up over and over with the students? So that's kind of cool. And Poker likes to see it as well. So then, after that, we're going to put congratulations. You've done so well. You've learned all these things. Now you can do this. And these are the activities that we did. And what comes next? And give them a praise. And then at the end there, I have extra resources if somebody wants to go learn deeper and learn more about the topic. And that's pretty much how I structure my modules, basically. So, okay, so now that we have a basic structure of a module with all the pieces, the introduction, the learning part, the applying, and then the wrap-up, let's go back to the orientation module and see a few more pieces in there. Again, we start with what we're going to learn in there. And then after that, in this one, we're going to introduce myself, the instructor. I write something personal. I write what brought me here, educational wise brought me to this place, also teaching experience and background that got me to this. I put a few pictures in that we were in class, was a Halloween thing. And so just to make the student again feel comfortable with us and also learn a little bit about us, and then we'd follow that up in the next page with how to contact us. And then this is the place where the homepage contact instructor will go to. And so I give him different ways of how to connect with me. Pronto and text is sort of the same thing in many ways. If I have Pronto available in the school, I take it. Otherwise, I'll do the text. I could even do it on a secondary number. I do, of course, Canvas, email, Zoom meetings, face-to-face meetings, and then also the Merit email by itself. I do that. You do whatever you like, but I kind of like that format, and I also like to have it in that orientation module clearly stated. And then I also give them in the next page, how do I communicate with them? How do I give them feedback, for example? And I list those. I do text, I do announcements, I can do grading feedback, discussions, email, etc., etc. And again, to your liking, but give them ideas of what you're going to do. And then from there, that's sort of those two items here. And then I have a page on We Celebrate Diversity, which I think is very important as ways to make the student feel welcome, feel better about doing this class, even though they might come with insecurities and things like that. We want to sort of dispel everybody's welcome. We learn from each other. I talk a little bit about biases in there, and then I do have a module, yeah, even for a couple of interesting infographics that are described here for the screen reader, and then I follow that up with an activity in the first week, which I can show you in a minute too. So that's pretty good for that. Diversity is very important. And then the next thing that we're going to do in there is, help improve on the course. Of course, we always want to ask them, what can we do to make it better? And then we talk about the basics. And so the first thing there is the syllabus, which we've discussed already. Then we have a little bit about the Canvas orientation. That's video guides, phone support, etc., where the student can go and get help to start with Canvas, to find. See here, we have numbers to go. We even have links to different apps, because the apps are pretty good. So just a place where the student can find help if we can provide them, or if we're not around and they need some. And this is already mentioned in the syllabus, but it's also nice to have it in its own page that they can just see it if they need help. We have important resources on various different places here. And that, of course, can always be expanded on. And then lastly, in this module, in terms of the main parts, I'm going to have tutorials on them. And the one that I use there is the studio tutorial, because I want them to be creative and make videos if that's how they like to communicate, and be open to that and welcome to that. So I want to teach them that. But again, if it's in the orientation module, its own page, it's easy to see, it's easy to access, it's not embedded anywhere. And then I can always link back to that within an activity and say like, hey, if you need more help for studio, go right there. And it just links right there. And then like in every page, we wrap it up with a congratulation. But I also have a whole module in my class that I teach, learning tools, but I put basically that main page behind here on the bottom. Because learning tools, you know, it's generally, I mean, there's some general study tips that we can do, different learning styles, the learning pyramid, I alluded to it a little bit. I like this guy, Ken Robinson, so I haven't watched this video. It's about creativity, and then they have an activity around that learning stuff and talk about that. I do give them a lot of information about a flashcard system that I really like, and anatomy, doing a lot of memorization, so it's good to have an organized system of some kind. And if I introduce them to this one, then at least it opens their door to maybe want to investigate that or other tools. These days, there's so many things on the phones and everywhere. And I do have a couple activities that I link with this study tool. And one of them is a discussion where this whole thing comes in, and also plan your study. So I want them to make actually a scheduler. And I'm going to go through that briefly. Actually, we can go through that now, because that sort of concludes the orientation module with these sample pages. We will have we have a specific tutorial for the tab making, and I'm going to walk you through that in a separate tutorial. Okay, then after the orientation, let's just briefly touch on week 1. So again, we have introduction, learning, apply. This is long. Lab, wrap up. Those are the main sections inside. So that chunks it up nicely for them in a modular level or basis. And then in the module, in the old pages, we also have it sort of separate, chunked up. We talked about the learning already. We talked about some of the applying. I just want to briefly tell you, this is the netiquette contract where they have to give me, here again, purpose, overview, direction, listen to the lecture, and then write a few sentences. And so just have a little integration activity around it. So that's pretty good, not too much time use for them. So the first week, you know, is partially a getting used to things week. I also have this Q&A discussion board and the orientation questions. I'm kind of vacillating which ones to use depending on which semester. Those goals go both over the syllabus. And then I talk briefly, I don't have a brief activity. I have an activity about the personal profile and introducing yourself. And that goes together with the diversity, with the accepting students, that inclusion, the celebrate diversity page. And in there, of course, purpose, directions. This is a pretty personal, because what I want them to do in here, I want them to edit their profile. I want them to put in a little bio, 100 to 200 words. I tell them what to write. That way, this is a beginning class, so often those students are coming into college, and that way they have that set up for Canvas for the further classes too. And then I tell them how to do it. And then secondly, I want them to actually make a video, so that way they practice the video situation also and learn how to make videos. And I want them to talk about one of their biases that they were exposed to. Not that they have, but that they were exposed to. All right, and so when we keep going here, we have, then the next one is to plan your studies. That goes together with the learning module a little bit. So I want them to make a plan. When are you going to study? So that way they can place that plan in a hallway, they can follow it, they can change it, but at least they've thought about how much do they need to study for this class. And I have very young students, and so they can also share that with their parents. And so then the parents know, oh, they need to study, they need to have quiet time to do that. All right, then I think that's pretty good for that. That's then regular questions I talked about. And then they have a discussion on the study tools. Just, I briefly mentioned it before, you can open it and look at it. And I think that's pretty much it for the first module, other than the things that we've already discussed. Perfect.